Welcome to the Ignite the Day podcast hosted by Rhema UK and Ireland, igniting your day with revelation, inspiration, and encouragement, helping you to live the life that God has called you to. Andrew and Kandyse, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to join.
I'm very excited because you guys have a fascinating story, so I'm really excited for people to hear it. Why don't you just start by introducing yourselves to our audience?
Yeah, so we're Andrew and Kandyse Carter. We live in Manchester, UK right now. We moved here in August 2024. 3 kids. We're previously from Ohio in the US. We were short backstory on what we were kind of up to before we moved here. We are Rhema graduates. We graduated in 2013. We got married right after we graduated Rhema, which is very cliche, but I'm happy that it happened. And then fast forward a little bit, we'll talk about some of our ministry journey. But then we were connections pastors in Ohio when the Lord called us to kind of drop our whole life and sell everything and move to England as missionaries. Now we're here and doing this podcast.
Was England ever something that you guys had been thinking about before, or was it a bit of a surprise?
No, we had never thought about England. We were very content in our life in ministry in the States. And then the Lord just kind of started putting it on our hearts, something overseas, which took a lot of prayer and just kind of seeking. And then it was just over time, he pinpointed England. And
yeah, I mean, to be honest, when we started feeling like we were being called to missions field, I was like, missions opportunities in Jamaica or other places. And then he's like, no, it's going to be Manchester, England.
Yeah, this is definitely not Jamaica. It's definitely not Jamaica.
Yeah, I never should have typed it in. I just stuck the nail in the coffin when I did that. He's like,
did one of you know first?
England first, I think I did.
Yeah.
But when in regards to moving overseas, I feel like we were both on the same page of no, but then I was like, okay, we need to be doing something. And then you were the one that the Lord spoke to that was finally okay, take the step of faith. Wherever you're going, doesn't really matter where, you just need to take that first step. And so each of us kind of helped carry the other through certain parts of the journey.
Yeah, because we had a really easy, I wouldn't call it easy, but we had 2 kids and a baby, and then we had full-time jobs that made really good money, like a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars. We were comfortable. We were able to travel.
Dream.
Yeah, we were living the American dream, but we were both super antsy and restless.
Interesting.
There just came a day where we were like, this is we were uncomfortable in being comfortable. And that's when we started kind of seeking the Lord of we feel like we're coming to a crossroads. What exactly are you moving us into? And then I think we both started getting that antsy feeling about the same time. Yeah, it was really weird.
So I think it's always so interesting, especially with couples. How do you get to that decision of literally, like you said, selling everything, moving to a country because there's some Americans love England and they're like, oh my gosh, I get to move to England. But it's really interesting that you guys are actually really happy where you were, and that journey of feeling that discomfort, praying it through, and then making the decision. What I'd love to hear about is what was that moment that you landed in the UK like when you got here? What did that feel like for you?
I think the fascinating bit was when we visited the UK right before we moved, we were we need to go scout it out because we had never been here before. We came and scouted it out. And when we landed back in Ohio, it was the weirdest feeling because we got off the plane and we were we're no longer home.
Yeah, It was really weird. We both remember it so vividly. Yeah. We were we felt like this was it didn't feel the same. It was so strange. I don't know how to explain the feeling, but it was really weird.
When we landed here, it was all kind of a blur, right? That first couple weeks, month. But I distinctly remember that pre-feeling of all right, what we knew as home is no longer home.
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff. We had 12 duffel bags, I think, and our 3 kids. One was under the age of 1. And it had been, they were pretty good on the flight, and we brought his parents with us. So that was really helpful. But yeah, I mean, we got to our Airbnb, remember? And it was like, there's broken glass in the rug. It was like the water wasn't working. And we were like, your mom was like, absolutely not. We're not staying here. And we were immediately like, I know, we were like, I thought it was going to be a little calmer than this. Like, we're not, in wherever in the Middle East somewhere, we don't know the language, like where we felt like it would be an easy transition, but right away it was like chaos.
And I think that's going to be something that a lot of people can identify with. How did you respond to that? What was going through both of your minds and your hearts when that was happening?
Well, I think through the chaos, that bit was like, okay, we had to keep going back to, okay, this is where the Lord sent us. We know, like, we had a word from the Lord. We know this is where we're supposed to be. And I think when you're thrown into it, it's like you have no choice but to figure it out. Like, we didn't have a house lined up. We didn't have anything, accommodations other than 2 weeks of an Airbnb. And everyone was like, oh, that's crazy. That's insane. Like, what are you doing? How do you not have a house? And we're just like, you know what? God's going to provide. And so you're like, you have a list, like, okay, we can get caught up in all the craziness, but really we just need to focus on, okay, these are the 10 things we have to do, or else we're going to be on the streets. And a lot of praying and seeking the Lord, but just going back to, this is where the Lord told us to be. So we're going to have to do what we need to do to make it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
And how was it?
It was pretty much a whole season of chaos, right?
Yeah.
Like, our oldest, she was kind of freaking out over adjusting here. So like, we just kept going to McDonald's every day until we could get her like acclimated to the food's not that different, but slightly different food. And then we were struggling to get a bank account, and everything required something else. So like, if you wanted to get a phone plan, you had to have like a card to the country, and to have a debit card or a bank account, you had to have an address, and we didn't have an address. So then we were like scrambling, and then like stuff would go wrong with our rental, and you wrecked the car, like a total loss the first week we owned it. It was like so crazy. But yeah, like he said, the transition of just like, we had a choice to make, I think, in that moment. Like obviously the devil wants us to like turn around and just give up, because this is insane. But like, we were like, there's no way. We would say from the beginning, we are not leaving the country until the Lord tells us to, and or the very last day our visa expires. And that's what we tell people to this day when they ask us like, how long are you going to be there for? As long as the Lord tells us, but definitely until the very last day of our visa.
Hopefully those two things are the same.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back a little bit. First, I'd love to hear about your journeys to Rhema. So how did you both end up at Rhema, which is where you met?
Yeah, you can go first if you want.
So I knew nothing about Rhema at all. Hadn't heard anything about Kenneth Hagin. I was probably 17, 18. I'd gone to my pastor and I was like, I feel a call into ministry. And I was looking at a couple of different options, and he gave me some advice. And then he basically gave me some of Kenneth Hagin's cassettes, because we're going. And somehow I had a car that played them. So I would drive to work and I'd put in Kenneth Hagin testimony cassette tapes and listen to it. And it was.
Should you preface what year this was?
Well, 1912. No, this was 2000.
Because you weren't even alive in
2011.
It's like so obscure that you listened to it on cassette tapes.
2010, 2011, something.
Yeah.
And you had a cassette tape in your car.
Cassette.
Yeah.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be.
Yeah. And it was through that, and he gave me a couple of books. And so I had read the books, listened to the tapes, and had kind of narrowed it down to a couple different Bible colleges. And the Lord just highlighted Rhema. And so I applied, literally moved to Rhema as 18 years old, knew no one except for a couple of roommates that I had met online a month or two before. And so people would be like, oh yeah, do you know so-and-so pastor? Do you know this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I came out of the Assemblies of God. And so I'm like, I know Assemblies of God pastors and regional things, but people were talking about just all the ministers within the Rhema family and so forth. I had no clue. I just knew that that's where God had led me to be.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'll try to make my story short because it's a bit long. But when I was a teenager, I didn't grow up in a Christian family, and I didn't come to know Jesus till I was 17. And so as a teenager, I got into a ton of trouble, like just carrying on, partying, drinking, doing all the things, and ended up in some legal trouble a few different times, and was court ordered to go to a boarding school in Alabama in the United States. And the boarding school happened to be started by a Rhema graduate who also hired other Rhema graduates to come work there. And so it was all girls, ages like 12 to 18, pretty much. And so we would go there, like out in the country, isolated, like no TV, no movies, like minimal movies, minimal phone calls home, no internet. And like basically the premise of the program was like to finish school, but also she would take like the Rhema classes that she had taken and break them down into like modules for like teens mostly. So I was obviously very unhappy to be there at first because I was being court ordered there and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I didn't grow up in religion really. I had gone to like a Lutheran church, on Easter and Christmas, but that was pretty much the extent of my background. And so the first day, like we sit in her office and she's like praying over me in tongues. And I was like, that's it. It's a cult. It's a cult. Get me out of here. I was terrified. My mom was terrified, actually. Everybody was terrified because none of us had ever experienced anything like that. And thank God, though, like there were times there, that probably could have been done better. Like, I think it's a hard job running a school with like 25 troubled teens that are all girls. Yeah. But one of the staff members in particular, a lot of them were such a godsend and like really listened to the Spirit. But one of them in particular was my case manager, and she like really made a huge impact on me. And she was a Rhema grad too. She had come from Greece actually to the US to go to Rhema, then ended up at this school. But she just loved me like unconditionally, despite my mean and nastiness. She loved me through it, and seeing their example of love, I think, really drew me to understand for the first time ever, like what the gospel was, and like to see it demonstrated, I think was really life-changing for me. Like I knew I was being nasty to them, and yet they were still showing me grace and love. And so I got saved at that school, and then we would go to winter Bible seminar like every couple years they'd take all the students just to like get to experience it. And so I had an idea of what Rhema was. And of course it was encouraged, like if that was an option that we wanted. So when I felt the Lord call me into ministry, I was like, well, I need to go to Rhema so I can figure out what to do next. So that's how I ended up there.
Wow. Two very different stories, but just so both
so
amazing. I think and you're both so young. Right, you're both so young to go to. Like I didn't go to Rhema until I was 27. Right, but you guys went there from when you were like 17 years old. So you felt that call really early. Did you really know what that meant and what that was going to mean for your lives?
No.
No. Not to the extent that it is. It's probably a good thing. Because when you're young and like you're at Rhema and you're like growing in the word and it's like saturating you, you're like very enthusiastic and zealous, and you're like, I can do anything.
Well, I kind of grew up following like Reinhard Bonnke and these guys who would have massive crusades and things in Africa, and I was always like, that was like what I was aspiring to, and it hasn't happened yet. But I'm like, you know what? Ministry, the one thing that I've learned so much is like we put a lot of things that we want to do, or like we put things on certain levels, but ministry is just doing what God asked us to do, when he asked us to do it. And so it's been a journey, but yeah, like Kandyse said, if we knew exactly everything that we would have done, we probably would have ran the other way.
Yeah. But I am glad that we like took the step to like prepare and train, because even coming on the missions field, thank God we at least had some background of like how to operate in ministry. I mean, some experience and then a lot of training from Rhema. like there's nothing that can fully prepare you for anything in life, really. You can like only prepare to a certain extent. But thank God we had some foundation, because I think it would have made it a lot harder if we had no background.
So what actually happened for you guys after Bible school?
Yeah, so we graduated in 13. So I had gone through, in the US, we had the evangelism track at that time, and Kandyse had gone through the pastoral track. We graduated 13. Kandyse was like, I never want to pastor. I was like, I never want to pastor. So perfect. We're on the same page. We got jobs in Tulsa. We hadn't felt, call to leave yet. We got jobs in Tulsa. We were just trying to pray it out and seek the Lord. Kandyse ended up going back for a third year, 15, through the evangelism track, right, itinerant ministry, third year. And then it was halfway through that year, we got connected with a church back in Ohio. So I grew up in Dayton, which is like an hour away from Cincinnati. And so this church in Cincinnati, the pastor was looking to transition and to step into his next season. And he was looking for a new pastor to come in and take it over. And even though we both, even up to that point, we were like, absolutely not. We don't want to pastor. We don't feel led to pastor. We got connected with the church, and it was just like very quickly, we knew that was what our next season was supposed to be. And so you
went and preached there.
Yeah.
It was a Rhema graduated couple that had started this church in Cincinnati, and it had been around for quite a while, but it was really small, and it was like they were having a hard time revitalizing it. So they were like, we think we need to pass it to somebody else younger and like move on from this. So we had no idea what we were doing, but we were very zealous and excited, as I mentioned earlier. And so we were like, and we felt the Lord release us to do it. And so we moved from Tulsa to Cincinnati, and basically within 2 weeks, I mean, we like spent a couple of days with them at the church.
Yeah.
And then they were like, here's the files. And like, it was all like paper files /
actual files.
I think Excel sheets and stuff. And and we were like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? It was so scary. I'm not going to lie. We were like, okay, well now like, I guess we have to be responsible adults, because we are responsible now for all these adults.
22.
Wow.
Yeah.
23. Yeah. And I think the youngest in our church was what? 60?
No way.
So that when we took over the church, the average age, barring us, was probably 65, 70, with the youngest being around 60. So it was.
Yeah. But we were so blessed because the church had the best people. Like they were not like weird about it, us being younger at all. They were like, you're our pastors now. Like we're going to rally behind you. So that was a huge, huge blessing, because we didn't have to really fight our way in, if you will, to like be accepted as the pastors. Or like people have said, like in situations like that, it can take time, a long time, to like slowly warm people up to you. And so to be like accepted rather quickly and be able to kind of hit the ground running, that was really helpful. So I really thank God for that, because it did make the transition a bit easier.
Yeah, they were amazing.
Yeah.
What was the vision that you guys had? So coming into this, what was the vision you had for what would happen at the church? And then how did that reality stack up or compare?
Yeah, well, I think we went into it with the vision. Over the course of pastoring it, we had changed the name of the church from what it was to City Pulse Church. And our vision was really to have a church that was the heartbeat of the city. We wanted a church that was really impactful in the community, to where, the community couldn't really exist without the church, because we were just that integral to the community. And I think that was our, like, the foundation. And then everything else kind of went from that. Obviously, we wanted to see people get saved. We wanted to see people be set free and all of that good stuff. But we really wanted to have a church that was the heartbeat of the city.
Yeah. During the process of pastoring, I think we read a book about churches that were struggling, right? Like what people do with struggling churches. And it had talked about like how churches should be like rooted into a community to where like if you were to pull the church out of the community would feel like the loss essentially. Yeah. And so that really stuck with us, and we were like, okay, like how do we get rooted into this community? Mm-hmm. So and for context, the Cincinnati, it was on the west side of Cincinnati, which is considered like the lower income kind of, generally slightly more crime.
Yeah, the west side was the side that was like established. It was extremely Catholic, and everyone who lived on the west side had lived there like their whole life. The east side was the side that was like bustling, that all the new businesses were going into, and that's where people had moved to, like, because they hosted so many different companies have their headquarters there, and they all live on the east side. So the east side was like the money side, and the west side was the people who would live there forever. And so there was like this east-west rivalry, which was fascinating. But...
yeah. So we had a lot of interesting adventures doing that, and for quite a while, I mean, it grew.
Yeah,
it did grow. We spent a lot of time trying to grow it, obviously, because we only had like 10 people, and the church had owned a building before we took it over. So like we had to deal with having the mortgage overhead and all that. And it was quite an old traditional building. So it made it a little bit challenging to like...
Well, contextual, not in UK old.
That's true. That's true. It might be like a dream building here. Yeah.
I was like, nothing's old in America. It's all new.
That's true. We can't really say that. Yeah. So that did make it a bit more challenging. We really had looked at all of our options to see if we could like go mobile or go into a school or something that would have like more relevance, I guess, to the culture there than this old traditional building, which now is apparently making a comeback, traditional church buildings, which I'm here for because I think they're beautiful, especially here in the UK. So who knows? Maybe we could have stayed in that building. But and then at one point we absorbed another church in the community overnight. So we had like happen? 15 or 20 people, right, in the church at the time. And then we got an email one day from another church, from a person at another church, like kind of up the road, and they were like, "Hey, our pastor like emailed us yesterday and said that he's leaving the ministry and like the church is done." So
it was a text on a Sunday morning.
It was a text.
He texted the worship leader on Sunday morning that he was done and was closing the church, basically.
Yeah. So they were like, "Can we all come to your church?" And we were like, "Sure, of course." And then I think the next weekend on Sunday, they all rocked up, and there was like 25 people, maybe more.
From the church?
Just overnight. Yeah. That basically assimilated into our church. And it was amazing. Like, I think we were up there crying, looking out into the pews, like, we've never seen this many people here.
Church overnight,
yeah. But we were like so infrastructure not prepared for growth like that overnight. And we still were learning the ropes. Like, we had no idea we were still trying to figure out how all of this worked. So that was quite chaotic. But man, that season taught us so many valuable lessons, like a quick tutorial in like how to shepherd people through like church hurt, like trauma like that, where the minister that you trust just like ups and leaves, and people like navigating people wanting to like immediately jump back into volunteering, and like us not really knowing like where they're at spiritually, and like just all kinds of stuff we kind of had to learn overnight how to navigate. So it was such an interesting season.
Andrew, what were some of the lessons you learned in that season?
I think the biggest thing for me was reaching out to others. So calling up other pastors that I knew and being like, "Hey, what do I do?" And then many times they're like, "I have no idea." But really learning not to try to do it in my own strength, but to obviously in tandem going to God first, but trying to rally other people around me for wisdom and advice as we walked through that. I think it was really cool, but then there was times where it was like really sad, because like Kandyse said, there was people who they had just felt the trauma of their pastor up and leaving. So we had to establish trust. We had to figure out and walk that fine line of someone who was the worship leader, wants to be the worship leader at your church, and you've known them for 5 minutes, and we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to handle this, because our job as pastors is to shepherd this flock, is to protect this flock, is to help train, and then people getting upset at us and leaving. And so having to, thicken our skin a little bit of being like, this is what we're supposed to be. We are the shepherds. We are the ones who are supposed to be, protecting this flock.
So there are a couple of things that I wanted to follow up on that you said. So one of them was about pastoring people that have been hurt. And because there are lots of people that have been hurt by the church. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about that. But also I wanted to understand about how did you guard your hearts in that time? Because there's so much going on, and they say like hurt people. So there might even be people kind of lashing out, but it's not really about you. It's about where they've come from. So how did you guys guard your hearts and thicken your skin a little bit in that time?
You're looking at me. I mean, in retrospect, there's probably a lot more that we should have done to guard our hearts. We were going at it like mostly alone. We had one friend that had moved from where she lived in the US to help us in Cincinnati. And so she was our children's pastor, which was a huge blessing. But we struggled to recruit people to come work at the church because there was no money. It was like,
I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried to get everyone we knew, but people were either already doing ministry things where they were at, or like they didn't feel called or wasn't enticing enough to like move to this brand new city without like any prospects to make money or find a job. So it was really, really challenging. And then because of the age of our congregation, they did volunteer, like they were involved for sure, but there's only so much you can do when you're like 75. And only so much we would feel comfortable asking them to do. So so that was hard. I think just feeling like that feeling of like, I'm going to come into the church. I'm going to be the person on the soundboard. I'm going to nurse my baby while I'm running sound. And then and then you're going to preach while I'm running sound and nursing the baby. And then like, hopefully someone will get up and like pass the offering plate or something. And then, but we also had someone come in late. So like no one's there to greet them because I'm behind the sound booth and he's preaching. And then as soon as sound was done, I would step out with the kids or the babies and do like children's church. And so that is only sustainable for so long. And so I think we learned in that season, it's been fun trying to do this all by ourselves and unable to find team, but like we started to learn the foundations, I think, of how vital like team is in ministry. And so like we for sure loved what we did and felt like it was really fulfilling. And for sure there was a grace that the Lord gave us to get through that season, but we probably didn't do such a great job of not burning ourselves out a little bit and guarding our hearts. Yeah. I liken it to like pastoring sometimes is like online dating, which we have actually.
I'm very curious where this is going to go.
We've had the luxury of not online dating, which I'm really grateful for because according to my friends that are single, it's a nightmare. But in the sense of like, you're on this app or whatever, like you're the pastor, people come in, like you might go on a few dates, it's panning out, they ghost you. They come on a date and they're like super weird or they come on a date and they're like the best person you've ever met, and then they like maybe you date for a year and then they're like, well, I think I want to go a different direction. It's like so much stuff like that in pastoring, to where like if you take it to heart every single time, like you're not going to survive. It's kind of a brutal position. Not to scare anybody who's listening, like please, we're super involved in training and mentoring church planters and helping facilitate church plants. So we need pastors, and pastoring is super rewarding, and there's definitely like a special treasure in heaven for you. Although it doesn't, don't quote that directly from the Bible. I'm just saying. It says store of our treasures in heaven, and I really believe that pastors are going to have a lot of treasure. But yeah, it was kind of like that. So you have to go into it like optimistic and like always, love believes the best in someone. Like we would go in with our heart on our sleeve, like we're going to love them no matter what, whether they stay, whether they leave, whether they blow up the whole church. So yeah, it's a tough position, but definitely a grace that the Lord will give somebody.
Yeah. I think like Kandyse said, the one thing that we learned through that is that we didn't really know how to guard our hearts. And it was really after, jumping ahead a couple of years after we had ended up closing the church down, that I, looking back, had realized like the way I was handling certain conversations that with people at our, next assignment, our next church, was like, I'm handling this wrongly because of like PTSD from when I was pastoring. Like when a husband and wife are having a disagreement about why bad things happen to good people, why evil things happen to good people, and they come to me to try to settle it, and I answer it the best I can, but inadvertently back up one side versus the other, and so they both leave the church. And so after that, I got very political, is how I would describe it. When people would come with hard questions, I would be like, okay, why are you asking this? Let me figure out. That's rather than, I had to learn how to be, go back to being bold at certain things. Like, this is what the scripture says. So even if you're going to leave the church because I tell you this is what the Bible says, like, we always go back to the word. And like, by the time we got to the end of it, because we hadn't guarded ourselves, we were both like at a stage of burnout and had burnt out quite a few volunteers. And so that really helped us in the future, looking back in hindsight, reframe how we treated volunteers, how we handled volunteers, to make sure that we weren't going to put anyone in that situation where we burnt them out again. And then,
well, like, we weren't mistreating our volunteers. We were loving, we loved on them, but we only had so many people to pull from for anything that was going on at the church. So we like always had to go back to the same people. So them, like us, there just wasn't enough of us to carry the load. Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of people see, right? Is that it's like the 80-20 rule. Like, it's 20% of people do 80% of the stuff in most churches.
Right.
Like, I think that's a real challenge we have, actually, I think, as the church, is that not enough people serve, so it does fall onto the same people all the time.
Yeah.
This is part 1 of a 2-part episode series. Make sure that you're subscribed to us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you watch your podcast to catch episode 2. See you then.